Okay, those who are speaking from here can take off their masks so you can hear better, and you keep yours on. So let's see. So we always start our debate with anthems. It's like a hockey game, but it's semi-serious, and sometimes we've highlighted like France after the terror attacks, and always God Save the Queen is always appropriate, and the U.S. and Israel in the reverse order. The rules are the Star Spangled Banner must go last. I think that's a rule. So we start with O Canada, and for Sheila. Any other Canadians here? We have one more Canadian, too. Okay, so those of you who want to know the words, which probably is true for most of you, the Siddur actually has O Canada on page 221. I think there's Siddurim in your places, and Chazan Fratkin has graciously agreed to lead us, the alternative being me leading us. So we'll start with O Canada, and I guess the Canadians should rise. Such a good anthem. Okay, we may be moving there soon anyway, so might as well learn it. So now we do Hatikva, and you can find that also in the Siddur if you don't know that, page 208.
Hashtag Bethel North.
Yes.
Israel.
וירושלים, ליאותם קושי, בארצנו ציון, וירושלים.
Every year, a few more flourishes. Very nice. So, Star Spangled Banner, it's on 221 in your Sidor, if you don't know the words. The Canadians might want to reference that. 221.
That's 2 toonies and 1 loony. Okay. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, with so gallantly streaming, and the rugged red glare that was bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still. Oh, send us that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Okay,
Oh,
let's go.
okay, we should probably quit now while we're ahead. Okay, thank you, Chazan Fradkin and Jerry Danoff. Okay, so we have the usual disclaimer when we start. I talk for a few minutes now. Compared to the news of the world and the tragedies we see day after day, sometimes I think maybe you do that an event like the Latke Hamantasch debate seems trivial, even maybe inappropriate. But if we stop having a little fun, then gun violence and voter suppression and terror, tyranny, lies undermine our way of life and our democratic values, and the bad people win. And this time there is still the virus. Who would have guessed what that has brought to the world since the last time we met live in 2019? I say, let's give ourselves the gift of laughter, appreciate the gift of life and creativity, which you'll hear today, and joy that makes a day, an event like this possible and I think desirable. So this is the 14th annual Latke Hamantasch debate. Anyone been at the first one? Oh, look at that. Okay, people always say that even if they weren't there. It's like, were you at the game where Dr. J, scored 68 points and like 140,000 people say they were there, and the stadium only holds 18. So 2 years ago, it was the 12th, and we always, numbers are big for Jewish people. And we talked about different number 12s, the 12 days of Christmas, the apostles, and other Jewish things. And then last year was 13. That was a little more difficult, but we did come up with a few things, like the age of a bar mitzvah, for example, baker's dozen, the floor left off of elevators, and of course from the Echad Miyodea, Shlosha Asar Miyodea, and the answer is Shlosha Asar Aniyodea, Shlosha Asar Midaya, attributes. These are the 13 attributes of God. You knew that last year. And this year it's 14 now. 14 is not so simple. It took me a long time, and I had to actually consult with a lot of volumes of names, really actually just Wikipedia. So 14 in Hebrew is Yud Daled, and of course that is a Hebrew word, Yad, the hand of God. And also backwards, Dai, like in Dayenu. Not bad. Okay, if you forget the meal part, there are 14 steps in the Passover Seder ritual, Kadesh, Urachatz, etc. It adds up to 15, but you get rid of what's the name of the eating part? Very good. Okay, get rid of that. You have 13. But actually, what date is the Purim in the month of Adar? The 14th. Okay, the number of books in the Mishnah Torah, 14. And the geometric sum of the Hebrew letters for the name David, Daled, Vav, Daled, is? 14. And notice that 2 of our contestants today are named David. So you think these things just fall into place accidentally? It's the hidden hand. Anyway, as you know already, if you listened to me before, the debate began at the University of Chicago. There are really only 2 people here who went there, right? Eduardo, where are you? Okay, he has his shirt on, stand up so they can all see it. It's like the highlight of his year is this debate. And now we have a new, yes? Lee? Oh, a genuine Canadian. Now, and we have Rabbi Megdal. Chicago, yes? You went there too. So we have 3 bookworms in our midst. Anyway, 7 decades ago or so, the debate was created. Scholars and scientists and historians, great legal minds debated the merits of the greasy potato pancake versus the heavy prune-filled triangular pastry. And the debate spread from there to other campuses. Hillel does it, to communities around the country. And one of my dreams ages ago was to make Purim and Hanukkah more fun by introducing Megillah Madness, you remember that, and this debate. And it is fun, and that's why we have all the trappings, the anthems, the academic attire, the special robes that we wear. You all remember the instructions for the cleaning the robes? Do not wash or dry clean. In other words, don't clean them. Anyway, a few thank yous. This debate doesn't just happen. Pam Kocher, who's sitting in the front, who's our who manages everything in the shul. We thank you, and she's been very helpful for today. And if there are any technical difficulties, I take full blame, even if it's her fault. And we want to thank the Danoff family, besides Jerry with his trumpet, Pat, who support this event financially. And behind the scenes, we always think of Ruth Chernia, Zichrona Livracha. She wrote the story of the debates in Chicago. This is the volume. And she was a member here for a long time until she died, unfortunately, in 2009. I don't know if we have any family members here today, but we think of her today. So we have 4 great choices for this debate, and the previous were great too. Any of the previous contestants here today? Okay, see that? See, they still come, so it wasn't so bad. Anyway, so it's not easy to get volunteers, and so if you're interested in doing this in the future, you'll let me know. In order of presentation, the contestants are Lauren Robin for the Latke. I'll do their bios before each one. Deborah Wasserton, who's doing hers remotely. Hamantasch, David Eigner, Latke, and David Margulies, the Hamantasch. Anyway, 2 will argue for the Latke, 2 for the Hamantaschen. We'll alternate the delicacies. The order was determined earlier by me. We used to do the coin toss, remember that? Many problems. The coins got stuck in the ruts in the carpet. Okay. Each contestant has 10 minutes to make their best case. Each may argue against the other delicacy. But I urge them in private, of course, to take the high road, focus on the merits of their delicacy rather than taking pot shots at the opposition, which, of course, they're going to do anyway. There are no follow-up questions. Actually, there's no debate. I am the moderator and the MC for this 14th debate. Happy to be here. I get to make the rules. And we take a little straw poll at the end, and then we test the actual products that are being debated now. So here we are, and it's a smaller audience than we're used to. We fill every space here in normal times. And that gave the debate a lot of energy, but I think we got good energy here today. So I thought of using those soundtracks they use at games to provide more noise, but this is not a game. This is very serious. Actually, it's Narishkeit. Anyone know that Yiddish word? Means meaninglessness. Narishkeit, raised to close to its highest level. Okay, I hope you'll enjoy. So I want to introduce Lauren first. I have the bios here. Lauren Posnick Robin was born in Miami Beach, Florida. Okay, no one wants to admit they're from Florida. Okay, was treated to many delicious latke meals growing up. After she grew up, she got a bachelor's degree in biology from Swarthmore College. And an SCD, what is that?
Doctor of Science.
Doctor of Science? From Harvard School of Public Health. I think that robe is Harvard. Okay, and Lauren works at the Food and Drug Administration, otherwise known as the FDA, on food policy. Her family includes her husband, Paul, who is a non-practicing lawyer at the FDIC, her son, Jeremy, studying physics at WashU in St. Louis. Okay. And Rachel, a student at Pyle Middle School. And Rachel just had her bat mitzvah in October, yes? Mazel tov. The family's been members since Jeremy was a baby. That's 17, 18 years. She was president of Nitzanim for a few years, volunteers as a room parent, a Sunday school liaison, Shabbos greeter, and more. The family, she says, all clamors for Latkes at Hanukkah time, not so much for Hamantasch at that time, but the family dog does happily eat both. So, Lauren Robin.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Rudolph, and thank you to my esteemed colleagues for being here today. And also thank you to the audience for coming out or listening online. And thank you for what I am sure will be your unanimous support for Team Latke, right? Very good. Okay, so today my goal is to convince you that latkes are the superior food to Hamantaschen. And I'm going to try to do that by focusing on three themes, three very important themes: our country, our health, and our religion, Judaism. So without further ado, the first question I'd like to address is, what's better for our country, the latke or the Hamantaschen? Now, you may be surprised to learn that the latke, the humble little potato pancake, can actually help us solve three serious problems facing the United States: inflation, the trade deficit, and lack of unity. So I'll start with inflation. You know, the US is really struggling with high prices now. And a shortage of oil is the big reason. You may have heard that President Biden had to tap into the US oil reserves amid rising prices. Ladies and gentlemen, if you need oil, latkes are the answer. 8 nights of Hanukkah can help replenish the US oil reserves and the world's oil reserves. As you may have heard the chairman of the Federal Reserve say many times, the more latkes are fried, the more inflation will subside. Second, our trade deficit. Our trade deficit is out of control. And folks, this is a serious issue. This is a national security issue for the country. Let's take a look at the ingredients of the latkes. Potatoes, onions, eggs, and oil, all made in the USA, made or grown here, okay? So, Well, what about the Hamantaschen, or as I like to call it, the foreign Taschen? No. Poppy seeds, imports. Dried apricots for the paste, import. Chocolate, imports. Folks, this is easy. Buy American, buy latkes, okay? Now, a serious problem, and I think our Rabbi Rudolph alluded to it. We've heard Rabbi Harris and Megdal allude to it. Lack of unity in our country. Our country is divided. And I think we can all agree that we need a feel-good symbol that can unite us. Now, what about the Hamantaschen? The Hamantaschen is a symbol of three-corner hats, would-be dictators, and gallows. In other words, a reminder of January 6th, okay? And I guess my gallows didn't appear. Guys, we don't need a cookie that reminds us of January 6th to unite us. No, we need a nice, warm, even a piping hot symbol like the latke to bring us together. Okay, so moving on from our country, I'd like to talk about you, your health. What's better for you, the latke or the Hamantaschen? So let's think first about who makes Hamantaschen. Is it a baker who follows the FDA food code or other regulations? Is it a trained chef who knows proper food safety techniques? Is it even an adult? No, it's preschoolers, folks, okay? Do you know where those hands have been? Do you want to eat something that was made on that table and brought home to you in a cute little bag? No, I don't think so. But, working at the FDA, I have some access to advanced laboratory techniques. And using a black light and a fluorescent spray, we can actually highlight the germs. Folks, this is not good for you. I think it's very clear. But what about the latkes? They involve sharp knives, jagged graters, hot splattering oil. You don't let kids near them. They are much, much safer for you, okay? Now, you may have heard, and I don't know, you may hear it today, that some people will say that potatoes and onions are dirty because they grow in the earth. But remember, potatoes and onions are peeled and washed before you eat them. But what about wheat flour, the main ingredient of Hamantaschen? Well, grain is actually often stored outside in big piles, which can lead to such situations as moisture and mold accumulating, bird infestation, and rodent infestation. And folks, remember, when the wheat is ground up, it's all grist for the mill, okay? That is getting into your food. And then there's the filling, okay? Hey. And look, I work at the FDA. I understand that a certain amount of foreign material has to be allowed in foods because it can just be unavoidable during crop growth or food production. But, look at this. Prunes allowed to be up to 5% insect infested. Poppy seeds, up to 3 milligrams of poop per pound. Chocolate, up to 60 insect fragments per 100 grams. It just doesn't sound good for you. And frankly, I'm not even sure Hamantaschen are kosher at this point. Okay, so I want to get on to the point I want to raise, the eternal question, the classic question, is it good for the Jews? And I'd like to address this in two ways. First, I'm going to start out by talking about the Kabbalah. Now, the Kabbalah is the ancient Jewish tradition of mystical interpretation. And there is a great tradition among Kabbalists to rearrange words to find secret meanings. So let's see what's revealed when Latkes and Hamantaschen are studied using Kabbalistic techniques. All right, Latkes, we get take, eat, let's sit a while, talk late. You know, like a nice, warm party feeling. That's just a good vibe. Well, what about Hamantaschen? Hasten stench? Snatch the matzah? Henchman chants anathemas? Ah. And my last one is, there we go. Shaman enchants mensch. Look, even if you like Hamantaschen, you have to admit that Kabbalistically, they are no good, okay? And now maybe the most important question of all, what makes people want to be Jewish? You know, there are a lot of programs to promote Judaism, like Birthright and youth groups, but are these really the most important factors? Now, as Rabbi Rudolph mentioned, our son Jeremy is at Washington University this year, and he was able to gain access to some insider information from a study going on there in the Washington University Department of Jewish Studies, looking just at this issue, what makes people want to be Jewish? And I was fortunate enough to get from him an interview that was done there. Let's see if I can activate it here. I'm going to let Pam do it, and Pam, hope you can make it full screen once it loads. Go. Now, you're half Jewish, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, thank you for participating in our study today. Let's look at these two foods associated with Jewish cuisine. And I'd like you to try them and tell me which makes you feel more Jewish. You know, you want to be Jewish. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
All right, I'll start with the Hamantaschen. This is the Hamantaschen, correct?
That's right. It's on the YouTube.
You know, this kind of reminds me of the steel cookies we have on Easter after the ham.
Go. Now, you're half Jewish, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I think we need Eduardo. Eduardo to the rescue.
It's Rabbi Rudolph's fault.
The teenager will fix it. Oh, mine works. I have several.
Fortunately, your presentations can be cut shorter, so that's okay. So it's not a problem.
If you want, you can show my video. We used to say that this would happen with slides. That the projector rejects bad data. I have a backup for mine.
There it is. Well, thank you for Can you start? participating in our Okay. study Can you go today. back to the start? Let's look at these two foods associated with Jewish cuisine. Okay. Okay. Go. Now, you're half Jewish, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, thank you for participating in our study today. Let's look at these two foods associated with Jewish cuisine. And I'd like you to try them and tell me which makes you feel more Jewish. You know, you want to be Jewish. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
All right, I'll start with the Hamantaschen. This is the Hamantaschen, correct?
That's right.
You know, this kind of reminds me of the steel cookies we have on Easter after the ham and the lobster bisque.
Uh-huh. I see. Okay, thank you. And could you try the latke now, please?
Yeah. You know, this right here, this is good. This makes me want to be Jewish.
Wow. I just want to give a shout out to the participants in that study and to Washington University and to Jeremy for kind of leaking this. Amazing, amazing work. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. In summary, and I apologize for the Hamantaschen gremlins that obviously caused this problem, but look, the Latke folks, it's good for our country, it's good for you, and it's good for the Jews. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren. So our next contestant is actually in New York at the moment, Deborah Wasserton, but she has recorded her presentation, and in a minute we're going to play it. But she needs an introduction, right? After all. By the way, all these people are Bethel members, all our contestants over the years. How many contestants have we had? How's your math? Well, this is 14 times 4, yes? Very good. Okay, Deborah Wasserton is a writer and a translator from Italian, Spanish, and French, presumably into English, who holds both dual U.S. and Brazilian citizenship. I officiated her marriage to Josh Cantro. At Har Shalom it was, because the sanctuary was under construction for a change. She has her bachelor's and library science degrees from the University of Maryland. She worked previously as an academic librarian at Columbia University, Barnard College, and the University of Michigan. Okay, a little more enthusiasm for the Blue and their wonderful football team. Anyway, then she abandoned librarianship to raise her two wonderful sons, Jonah and Abe. She grew up attending Bethel in the days when the Latke Hamantasch debate was but a distant dream. She wrote that, I didn't write that. She returned with her family to the D.C. area in 2018 after living in New York for 2 decades. And she was happy to return to Bethel, where she contributes in many ways, a member of the Skolnick Adult Institute Committee, writes articles for The Scroll, organizes food drives for Mitzvah Day, and attends meetings of Kesher Nashim as a 3-time cancer survivor. The fact that she is unable to be at the debate live and in person due to travel to New York only proves what many of her Bethel friends suspect, that in her mind at least, she never actually left the Big Apple. So Deborah Wasserton will speak on behalf of the Hamantasch, or Hamantasch Inn.
Shalom Bethel. Thank you, Rabbi Rudolph. Thank you to my fellow debaters and to everybody who's attending today. I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person. When Rabbi Rudolph asked me to participate in the debate this year, I was so excited I forgot to check my calendar. I'm in New York and last night attended a concert by the rock group Yola Tango. They give a concert on every night of Hanukkah every year and give the proceeds to charity. So even though I'm not here, I did do my small part for Tikkun Olam. Because my background is interdisciplinary by nature, I'm taking an interdisciplinary approach to assert the superiority of Hamantaschen. I will do this by a text study, a survey of children's literature, semiotic analysis, and an outsourced contribution on geometry. In preparing for this debate, I cast my net far and wide, trying to draw on expertise from many different friends. I reached my friend Marcella Simoni, who is a scholar of Italian Jewish history, and she reminded me that Latkes and Hamantaschen are not a universal, but are just one corner of the very large tent of Judaism. In her reply, she says, "Ciao, Deborah. Thanks for thinking of me. This is a purely inter-Ashkenazi matter." With that settled, I'd like to get on to some text study. And the text I'm bringing before you is a famous teaching from Pirkei Avot, chapter 5. And it is something that Ben Bagbag said. Ben Bagbag Omer, Hafoch ba vehafoch ba, decholava. That means turn it and turn it, for everything is within it. Most sources of commentary that I was able to track down pin this to the Torah. The Torah has everything in it, and we can turn and turn the text of the Torah endlessly and find every possible subject matter within it. However, for our context, I think that one interpretation which has gone missing for far too long is that Ben Bagbag was in fact referring to the Hamantasch. The Hamantasch is something we can turn and turn, and we might find everything or anything within it. Prune, poppy seed, apricot, raspberry, chocolate, even dulce de leche. Now we will make a brief survey of children's literature, and we will do that by judging books by their cover, which is something we avoid in normal everyday life, but in the interest of time is the extent of analysis that we can do here. Books about Latkes. Too many Latkes. Way too many Latkes. We have hardly started our exploration, and we are already overwhelmed by Latkes. Then we encounter the book by the disgraced children's author Lemony Snicket, a book called The Latke Who Couldn't Stop Screaming. Subtitle is A Christmas Story. I don't know if we really need a whole lot more evidence to prove how off-putting, overwhelming, and generally unpleasant the Latke as a figure in children's literature can be. Not only are we overwhelmed by Latkes, not only are they screaming at us, but they are running away. They are fleeing us, forcing us to chase after them, and possibly even leading to allegations of plagiarism. We have the runaway Latke and the runaway Latkes. And by this point, I think we're all starting to wonder if the borrowed Hanukkah Latkes were legitimately borrowed, or were they, in fact, perhaps stolen. I know that the evidence I presented was a bit disturbing, so let's all take a deep breath. And let's look at the literature of the Hamantaschen. Meet the Hamantaschen, a Purim mystery, introduces 3 beguiling characters. I'm hopeful that we get to know each of them by name and by filling. Not for all the Hamantaschen in town looks to be a charming retelling of the 3 little pigs. Yes, I am concerned about the wolf who seems to be lurking behind that tree. What if he has Latkes in his pocket? But in the foreground, there is a basket, and that basket is filled to the brim with delicious Hamantaschen. I believe that all will be well. The Better Than Best Purim presents on its cover one of the most welcome and famous tropes in all of Jewish children's literature, the baking bubby. The baking bubby is a source of instant comfort. Even the domestic animals are calmed. Cakes and Miracles, a Purim tale, has a beautiful painting on its cover. And Purim goodies. What more can be said? I think we're all feeling relief. Moving on, I would like to present semiotic analysis of Hamantaschen versus the Latke. Semiotics is the study of signs. It asks, what do signs mean? Hamantaschen are a sign of Purim, and the Latke is a sign of Hanukkah. Semiotics has its origins in John Locke, Ferdinand de Saussure, and Charles Sanders Peirce. What do these three men have in common? I am pretty sure none of them ever tasted Hamantaschen or a Latke. Let us look at Hamantaschen as a symbol. Hamantaschen symbolize plenty and abundance. The shape of a triangle connotes unity. Two interlocking triangles form a Magen David. According to my friend, the poet and teacher, Sarah Antine, Hamantaschen are ideal for sharing with as many people as possible. They are easy to transport in order to spread the joy of the holiday. Hamantaschen embody an attribute of our enemy, depending on whether you call them Hamantaschen, which is Haman's pockets, or Oznei Haman, which is Haman's ears. We actually get to eat a portion of our enemy symbolically. How satisfying is that? Finally, in the words of my mother, Martha Wasserton, if you squeeze Hamantaschen, good stuff comes out. Now let's look at the symbolism of Latkes. Latkes symbolize plenty and, as we saw in our survey of children's literature, overabundance. Their circular shape suggests an endless cycle that we may never be able to break out of. Latkes are cumbersome to transport and share. Making latkes will stink up the house. Potatoes are a New World crop. Aside from the oil latkes are fried in, there is no connection to the Hanukkah story. Hello, cholesterol? And in the words of Martha Wasserton, if you squeeze a latke, you end up with a mess. For my final piece of evidence, I have outsourced it to an expert, Jordan Ellenberg, who is my high school buddy and is a mathematics professor at the University of Wisconsin. He's the author of a novel, Grasshopper King, and How Not to Be Wrong and Shape, which are both books about math. I asked Jordan to speak in support of Hamantaschen.
A Hamantasch is a triangle. A latke is a circle. Those are both pretty fundamental geometric shapes. So on what grounds can we say that one is better than the other? Well, I have an answer. A latke is a circle that's just a circle. A Hamantasch is a circle of dough that has been folded into a triangle. So it not only represents one of the most fundamental geometric shapes, it represents two, and more than that, the principle of transformation from one form to another, one of the most fundamental ideas in geometry and in life.
Thank you all for your attention today. And with this, I rest my case, and my case is full of Hamantaschen. Chag Sameach.
Okay, we thank Deborah, and you can thank her in person when she comes back from New York, which I think she will. So I prepared a lot of research, but I think we're running a little late. So we're going to, between our second and third debaters, we're going to share two guest cameos, videos this morning, to get to the heart of the issue, which in many ways is, which is the better delicacy? So I did a lot of scientific research, and here are the results in video form. The first video is familiar. We showed it last year, but maybe you missed it, and I think it still sparks joy. And the second is more personal. I'll introduce that after the first.
Warm greetings to you all. My name is Tony Fauci, and I'm the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at the National Institutes of Health. I would like to thank Rabbi Rudolph and my colleague David Margulies for this opportunity to meet with you virtually. I am delighted to weigh in on this year's debate at Congregation Bethel on the virtues of Latkes versus Hamantaschun. While my wife and I enjoy both of these traditional foods, my vote is for Latkes with applesauce or sour cream, preferably sour cream. I wish all of you a happy Hanukkah, and please continue to wear a mask, stay safe, and keep well.
Okay, and David did arrange that, and I love the beginning where he introduces himself like we didn't know who he was. So now also very scientific is the second video, and it may sway the voting, so that may have also, I think your voting also depends in part on which delicacy you like rather than which debaters you thought were better. But anyway, let the chips fall where they may. So this is a counterpoint video featuring a close relative of mine who has never been consciously exposed to either of the delicacies and therefore was not influenced by any echo effect, discussion or debate or whatever. This is pure science. Which will this relative prefer? Now, there isn't much dialogue in the video, but you can see what you see, but there's one key question and answer near the end, so you listen very carefully for the definitive statement from the second video.
Here we go. Two beautiful examples of the delicacies in question today, and we'll see if our expert scientific witness prefers one or the other. So now we begin the test. I think we need to be cut.
Want to cut the latke?
Okay. Do we have a knife? Cut up the Hamantaschen too, I would think. It's too big.
It's a little hot.
Okay.
It's just warm. You can eat it.
Yeah.
See, the temperature is an undecided factor.
That's the Hamantasch, you can't see.
Cookie. Hamantaschen. Do you want to try the latke? No.
Okay.
I think we have our winner.
Okay. That was Josie. Anyway, you make your own judgments. So our third contestant, back to our live, is David Eigner in the green. David is LTC. What's that?
Lieutenant Colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel in the Medical Corps, United States Army. Currently, he's staff pediatrician at Walter Reed over here. And his previous postings, besides many years there, include as battalion surgeon, the 168th Armor Regiment, 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division in Kuwait. Yes. And there he was also the lay leader of the Jewish services. He also was field surgeon, 94th Brigade Support Battalion, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 10th Mountain Division, deployed in Afghanistan. Also chief of pediatrics at the Army Hospital in South Korea. His degrees are from UC Davis and then from the Uniformed Services University, where he got his doctorate degree. He's been on various medical boards, has various licenses, won many awards, none of them as important as today, being a contestant. Several times Pediatrician of the Year by the American Academy of Pediatrics, military awards including the Bronze Star Medal, Combat Medical Badge, Meritorious Service Medal twice, Army Commendation Medal 3 times, many more, including the Campaign Star for Afghanistan campaign and a NATO medal. The Eigners moved to Bethesda in 2014. They joined Bethel because Hannah loved the preschool. Currently, Hannah is 9 and in 4th grade. I don't know if she's here. Hannah? There she is. Yay. I'm sure she's embarrassed by all this, but such is life. Rebecca, her older sister, is 14. Is she here? She's over there. Over there. Okay, and had her bat mitzvah after it was rescheduled 3 different times because of the COVID. Manisha, the mom, is a master of challah making, and David does things, including Bikes for the World for Mitzvah Day every year. David Eigner, Lieutenant Commander.
Well, thank you, Rabbi, for that introduction. I did not know volunteers were needed because I have been volunteering for 3 years before I finally made the cut. So it's great to be here finally. So as mentioned, my name is David Eigner. I'm currently active duty at Walter Reed, and I was advised by the people in my hospital that I must read the following statement, word for word, before I may continue. The content of this talk are the sole responsibility of the author and do not necessarily, but they might, represent the views, policies of the Uniformed Services University, Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, the Army, and the Department of Defense. I was advised that I must be ensured that this is a fair presentation. For those of you in the medical field, I must also make the following financial disclosures. I do not own anything in the Idaho Potato Company, the people who make jelly, the state government of Idaho, Wisconsin, sour cream, or Pennsylvania. I wish I did, but I don't. So now that I have gotten rid of the legal things, I will now move to my credibility. For the Latkes side, let's go to this one. One more. Go one more. One more. Okay. For the Latkes side, we have a military officer and a food safety officer. That was as much as I could interpret of your bio, so I thought that was close enough. And for the Hamantasch side, a translator, writer, and a scientist doctor, who I must say actually does outrank me from the PHS. So perhaps my argument will not suffice. Next slide, please. From the Pew side of this one there, you can see the contribution to society. This would be a much better joke if I was debating a lawyer, and according to Rabbi Rudolph, this is the first time in years we have not had a lawyer on the panel. Nevertheless, I'm going to move on through, and if you look at the sum of our credibility, we exceed, I'll go back one. We exceed, on the Latke side, the credibility of the Hamantasch side by 6 points. So accordingly, I wish to shed and do the rest of my presentation wearing my lucky boonie cap from Afghanistan. So if you're not, so if you don't pay attention to any words or any kind of arguments, the visual of my cool hat should hopefully save the day. And so now we will move on to my thesis, is that latkes are the food of choice for Jewish superheroes. Next slide, please. First superhero is the Thing. His given name is Benjamin Jacob Grimm from Yancey Street of the Lower East Side. You may be saying, why is the Thing Jewish? As you know, we are very proud of Jewish contributions to the performing arts, and the Thing was created by Stan Lee and the artist Jack Kirby. And really, what is the Thing? Jack Kirby relied on his Jewish Hebrew school training and created a golem. A golem, so for those you can recall from Hebrew school, is a living object made from objects that are not living. And as you can see, it's not even subtle how much Jack Kirby took the Thing and a golem and made him into a modern comic book hero. Next slide, please, Pam. So as you can see, for further proof of his Jewish roots, this is from the Fantastic Four, Volume 3, number 56, published in August of 2002, Remembrance of Thing Past. And in this scene, the Thing comes back to his old neighborhood in New York and sees his old mentor, Mr. Schleckenberg, who is dying. He cannot save him, but he remembers to say the Shema. And further on in the episode, here's the Thing celebrating his bar mitzvah, which occurred 13 years after he became the Thing and stuff like that. I don't know how the horror went. That might have been a really tough one, but maybe the superheroes all got together. My next Jewish superhero is the Flash. This clip, if we can get it to work, is from the recent movie, The Justice League.
Barry Allen. Bruce Wayne.
You said that like it explains why there's a total stranger in my place, sitting in the dark, in my second favorite chair.
Tell me about this.
This is a person who looks exactly like me, but who is definitely not me. Very attractive Jewish boy.
Ah, did you hear that? Barry Allen is Jewish. And next slide, please. So, this is someone who looks like me, but is definitely not me, a very attractive Jewish boy. Further roots of the Flash Jewish heritage can be found in December 1989, Christmas with the Superheroes #2, where the Green Lantern wishes his good friend, the Flash, Happy Hanukkah. There are other Jewish heroes, but let me go to my next thesis. In order to prove that Latkes are the choice of Jewish superheroes, we must do a nutritional analysis of the Latke versus the Hamantaschen. And as you can see, the Latke is a very unhealthy food, and the Hamantaschen is healthy for you. I know that my esteemed colleagues would be shocked by my footnotes, but this is what I did in terms of that from there. And then my next slide demonstrates that if you actually need protein or vitamins or stuff like that, you're much better off having a Hamantaschen than a Latke. So why would a Jewish superhero want to have this food? Does the Thing go to his internist and say, you know, doc, I just can't get my HDL a little bit higher, my LDL is too high? No. Oh, next slide, please. No, the Thing doesn't have to worry about his cholesterol. I don't think the Thing is going to have a heart attack. And is the Flash advised by his advisor, you know, it is recommended by the American Heart Association that you get 150 minutes of extreme exercise per week. But the Thing does that every single day, as does the Flash. Look at his waist. He doesn't need to worry about his calories. So if you are a Jewish superhero, you don't need healthy stuff that comes in a Hamantaschen. You don't need vitamins. You don't need all this nutrition stuff. You need the grease and oil that is in a Latke. And that, of course, a Jewish superhero will choose the Latke. My next Jewish superhero is Wonder Woman. Well, actually, Wonder Woman herself is not Jewish, but Gal Gadot is. There you go. There you go. And then my next slide. Now, honey, I'm happily married for the last 18 years, but I think we can all say objectively that Gal Gadot is a class 1 attractive woman. And therefore, the purpose of this slide is to get the vote of all teenage boys in the audience right now. But unfortunately, I don't see any teenage boys in the audience. However, my next slide will appeal to all of the grandmothers and grandfathers in the audience. Because how could you vote against my daughter in her Wonder Woman costume? I did not know that Rabbi Rudolph would also have a dueling cute child in his presentation. But this is what we have. So now you're saying, but where's the connection? Yes, Gal Gadot is beautiful, and yes, Hannah is very cute, but why would Wonder Woman prefer the Latke? And that is because Wonder Woman has a shield, and the shield is the shape of a Latke. So in summary, I have tried to distract you with my military hat. I've tried to distract you with a picture of a beautiful Jewish woman and of my cute child, and I've given you the nutritional analysis of some fictional characters. How can you not vote now for the Latke? And with that, Thank you very much for your time. This is Colonel Eigner, over and out.
Okay, and our last contestant, David Margulies, member of Bethel since 1983, which is actually the year that I showed up here too. He's a medical scientist at the NIH, raised in Nutley, New Jersey. Okay, a few people admit they came from New Jersey here. But he's a spiritual New Yorker with degrees from Columbia and from Yeshiva University, the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, where he got his MD and his PhD. Following a residency in internal medicine at Presbyterian Hospital in New York, he and his wife Donna Vogel, Latke Hamantasch debater in 2008, came to Bethesda as postdoc fellows in 1980 and have lived here ever since. David has a research group that studies the function and molecular structure of molecules that control the immune response, including antibodies, T and natural killer cell receptors, and major histocompatibility complex molecules. So you know it's all about those histocompatibility complex molecules. David and Donna have two sons who grew up at Bethel, Ben now living in Charlottesville and Dan living in D.C., the father of granddaughters Eve and Ruth. Ruth just born a month ago. Mazel tov. David is a very familiar face around the shul, at the daily minyan, early Shabbos minyan, Parsha study, reading Torah, etc., etc., etc. David Margulies speaking on behalf of the Hamantasch.
I'll take out my notes, but I won't look at them. Ladies and gentlemen, Gvirotai, Rabotai, I would like to present the case for, let's see, is this working? There we go. Okay. The case for the Hamantasch today. There is no need for a case. There is no argument. And as I go through the evidence that I will present to you, it will be clear that we don't even have to vote at the end. I would like to start, as David Eigner did, with a disclaimer and tell you that I do hold intellectual property rights, and I serve on the advisory boards of two companies, Hamantasch Forever and STL, Stop the Latke Incorporated. All of these opinions that I expressed during the seminar are solely my own, do not represent those of anyone else or any other institution. So the outline of my talk is really to go into some aspects of Jewish law and tradition relating to each of these foods and the holidays they represent. We'll discuss whether or not they're even mentioned in the Tanakh. We will show you some statements from the Talmud and from modern commentators, in particular the Lubavitcher Rebbe and Rav Soloveitchik. And finally, I will show you some newly discovered evidence of a stele from a Bethesda excavation that reflects on this. And then for the second part, we'll talk in hard science. We'll talk in mathematical terms and look at the structural and molecular analysis of each of these foodstuffs. These are the results of ongoing experiments soon to be published. They have profound implications for community health, and I think we will all be happy to know the conclusion from that. Let's start with some definitions. The latke, literally a pancake or a fritter, comes from the Greek, eladion, which means oil. In modern Hebrew, it's called leviva, and I point out to you this is commonly considered a dumpling. But for those of you who are familiar with the second book of Samuel, there's a rather racy story about Tamar, who is asked by her brother Amnon for levivot. And I refer you to that chapter in order to have an interesting idea of how inappropriate leviva is as a word for a food for a holiday. The Hamantasch, on the other hand, as you've heard before, refers to Haman's pockets, also called Oznei Haman, Haman's ears, the defeated enemy of the Jewish people. Now, although we've heard a lot about different fillings for the Hamantasch. The real original one is mon, from poppy seeds. Poppies, as you know, are the source of one of the most important drugs for mankind. And this celebrates the holiday of Purim, a celebration of survival. The Latke deals with Hanukkah. Is there really a miracle of the oil? You know, we say we celebrate Hanukkah for 8 days, and we say the oil lasted 8 days, but the oil was supposed to last for 1 day anyway. So the miracle, even from that story, is only 7 days worth of miracle. So I don't understand why we celebrate it for 7 days. We'll go into this a little bit more. Hanukkah, you have to realize, Hanukkah is not even mentioned in the Torah, in the Nevi'im, in the prophets, or in the Ketuvim, in any of the other books of the canonized Bible. There is no Hanukkah in our canon. Hanukkah is mentioned passingly in a different Masechet, a different tractate of the Gemara in Shabbos. It doesn't even have its own Gemara. The books that really talk about Hanukkah are all apocryphal books, originally published in Greek, in the Septuagint, in the Apocrypha, in the book of Esdras, in Josephus, a somewhat secular historian. We don't even have any books that were originally written in Hebrew that talk about Hanukkah. These were books preserved by the Christian church. Purim, on the other hand, as you know, we have the Megillah Esther. This is a scroll that we read each year in Hebrew. There's also a whole tractate of the Talmud, both the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud, on the tractate that refer to Megillah. So from a religious point of view, we probably shouldn't even celebrate Hanukkah. Now, the other thing is, if we go through the many pages of the Talmud, it is very rare to find illustrations in the Talmud. And one of the illustrations here, as you can see, there's a circle right here on the bottom of the page. And what does it say? What does this refer to? This refers to whether or not we can eat round foods. And as it says here, Reb Eliezer says, anything round is forbidden. It's puzzle, it's disqualified, it's unfit, it's useless. We can't, whoops, okay. So now we'll turn, after essentially telling you that eating latkes is not only not approved, it's really not kosher. I want to give you the opinion of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Now, the Lubavitcher Rebbe is famous world over for a whole variety of things. He's a great religious leader, but I want to point out as well that he's a true scholar. He, some years ago, surfaced his registration document from the university in Berlin in 1928, which is shown on the left. I'm going to change pointers here for a second, which might make things easier. Okay. So here is his registration document. And these are the courses he signed up for in Berlin in 1928. And you'll see here that he took a course from Professor Heinrich Mayer on application of logic, courses in mathematics from Ludwig Biberach, who invented the Biberach conjecture and studied analytical geometry with him. And here he took exercises in analytical geometry with Georg Feigl. But most impressive is that he took courses with Nernst, the Nobel Prize winner, and Schrödinger, Nobel Prize winner, on thermochemistry, thermodynamics, quantum mechanics. Remember, Schrödinger wrote a book called What is Life? And he even very well understood the time-dependent Schrödinger equation, the basis of our understanding of quantum mechanics. Okay, so we have the opportunity, even though the Rebbe had died a little while ago, to communicate with the Rebbe and ask him some questions. As you know, the Rebbe is buried in the Old Montefiore Cemetery in Queens, New York, a cemetery I had the misfortune of having to visit many years ago, as my grandparents are buried there, which has these lovely old tombstones. But the Rebbe's grave has a fax machine. So one can deliver a fax to the Rebbe, ask him a question, and invariably, if he sees that the question is worth his time, he has a lot of time now that he's deceased. But anyway, one can ask, and so we asked the Rebbe via fax, which is better, the Hamantasch or the Latke? The Rebbe answered, the Hamantasch, it has the taste of heaven. Latkes, Gewalt. And then somebody raised the question, well, what about the Hanukkah menorah on the mall? He said, it's okay, but to eat latkes, oy vey. We also had the opportunity to search through the works of the Rav Soloveitchik, from a class, a shiur he gave in 1974. Much of his work is not published, but there are recordings of these which are available. And he described on entering a classroom that I emerge young, less fatigued, less exhausted than my young pupils. We belong to the same Masorah, the tradition community, where generations meet. What does this mean if we really interpret this properly? Teaching children is like eating a Hamantasch, a communication that crosses all generations. But the most exciting discovery related to our Jewish heritage is that in the excavation for the Marriott Hotel on Woodmont Avenue recently, an ancient stele was discovered, which has been dated by scientists and archaeologists from the Smithsonian Institution to about 850 BC, has a Hebrew inscription, which we can look at in this ancient Hebrew text, which says that Hamantasch and Purim are the real thing. Latkes at any time are to be discouraged. This goes back to the Talmudic dictum not to eat anything circular. Though leniency should be considered during Hanukkah for those who don't know any better. Okay, so we've gone through the halachic aspects and the Jewish traditions that favor the Hamantasch, but now we really want to go to hard science, a little bit of mathematics, but mostly experimental science here. And what we'll talk about, as mentioned before, is the Hamantasch is a geometric triangle. In 2 dimensions, it's a triangle. That 2-dimensional object can has 3-fold symmetry. It can be put into 6-fold symmetry. You could pave your floor with triangles without any open spaces. This is viewed, as we see, of the hexagonal crystals of snowflakes. And this expands in 3 dimensions to the regular tetrahedron, which has 4 sides, all equal, a perfect solid, if you will. And in engravings by Mauritius Escher, we see that he uses 3-fold symmetry. And what does that 3-fold symmetry give us? If we look at his etchings, of course, a Magen David. The Hamantasch, of course, as I said, is a tetrahedron. It's the first of the Platonic solids. It has 4 equal sides. However, note, the sphere isn't even mentioned here. Plato didn't care about the sphere. Okay, let me quickly summarize for you our recent experiments on the molecular basis, the molecular components of the Hamantasch, as determined by X-ray crystallography. We have an experimental plan. We take a batch of 100 freshly baked Hamantaschen. We grind them up. That's what biochemists do for a living. We centrifuge away the impurities. We purify by a variety of chromatographic techniques. We establish their purity. And this is what that looks like. The crude extract has many different components, but after purification, we get single individual bands, single species, and we see whether or not we can crystallize them. And I'll show you the results of the analysis of those crystals. These protein crystals then give rise to X-ray diffraction data. We can solve the structure by calculating these mathematically and build a molecular model at atomic resolution of what the inherent essence of Hamantasch is. The first difficulty is getting conditions for crystallization. For that, we have a robot. We screen thousands of conditions and find a couple that give us really nice microscopic crystals. We can mount them onto a little loop in a microscope. And then we freeze that crystal, and we send it by FedEx to the synchrotron at the Argonne National Laboratory. This is a synchrotron where we have detector time, and we can remotely take the crystal, as shown by this robot, put it into the beamline, and the beamline then allows the X-rays to impinge on the crystal, and we can collect the diffraction pattern on a detector. And this is what a diffraction pattern looks like. We have hundreds of frames of these. The intensity of every spot and the exact position of every spot is important for solving the structure of this. And from that, we can calculate this chicken wire backbone, the electron density map, and we can determine what the final model of the essence of Hamantasch is at atomic resolution. And this is what the essence of Hamantasch, like many things, the macroscopic reflects what the microscopic is. And that's certainly true for crystals. We also did the control experiment, or tried to do the control experiment, using components of a latke. The experimental plan was pretty much the same. We used 100 latkes. We ground them up. We centrifuged away the impurities. We tried to purify, but there wasn't much left. We established that purity, and we got really poor yield and poor quality crystals, but we had a couple, so we tried them. What did we get? We got no diffraction data. There's no fundamental structure of the latke. The control, the essence of latke, if you will, is garnished. It had no electron density map that we could generate and no final model. Okay. But now, how do we apply this to our most pressing current medical health problem? What about the virus that causes COVID-19? This is a cryo-electron micrograph of the virus. This is a view of the virus attaching to a cell surface here. And we now know in atomic detail from work from a variety of laboratories that the viral spike protein has this shape and structure, and that if we look at it from the end, the end view is that it's a triangle. So what does that mean? That means, whoops, I'm sorry, let me go back one. Can I go back? How do I go back? I'll go back. You'll go back. I'm trying to go back. Please. Back one more. Yes. So we're going to use this to see if we can figure out from that structure how to deal with all of these variants. Now we're up to Omicron already. What we do when we get to Omega, I don't know what alphabet we're going to use. We're probably going to use Hebrew alphabet at that point. But as you can see, Omicron has many, many mutations. Each one of these is a particular point in the spike protein structure that is different and probably contributes to its transmissibility and to its ability to evade the immune system, but we really don't know yet. So what we will do is ask what happens if we look at the viral spike protein, the essence of Hamantasch, and if we put the two together, we have the viral spike protein, but we can block its interaction with the receptor with the essence of Hamantasch. So what I've told you now, we've gone through halacha, we've gone through Jewish tradition, we have a whole lot of support for the Hamantasch and even the possibility the latkes aren't even kosher. And what I hope to have shown you is from science that we can formulate a compound that has a good chance of saving us from COVID. But I would also suggest that a Hamantasch a day can keep the COVID away. So the Hamantasch wins, and it will cure COVID-19. And I'd just like to thank my family, particularly my wife Donna, who listens to everything I say but doesn't always comment, our sons Ben and Dan, and our granddaughters Eve and Ruth, and of course Menachem the Wonder Dog.
All right, in 5 years, I could maybe replicate that last presentation. But I understood it all, don't worry. Anyway, we're about done, and now we have the key moment where we take the vote to see who you think, which debaters won the day, those who favor the Latke or those who favor the Hamantaschen. And then we have a little extra treat for you following that. So let's take the vote. So first of all, I always ask first, how many prefer regardless, and irregardless? Either word is the same, right? How many prefer the Latke over the Hamantaschen? And how many prefer the Hamantaschen over the Latke? People voted twice. Okay, forget that. Okay, how do we think we did today in the debate? Those who thought that the Latke carried the day, raise your hand. Okay, and how many think the Hamantasch carried the day? Amazing. It's a tie. Okay, so if you got 5 more minutes, I want to show you one more video, because today is about joy, and so I want to share one version of the Ode to Joy. This one comes from a Spanish town, and it talks about joy, and what we hope to create with this debate is joy, and look at the numbers of musicians and the power of the music and its intensity, and see if that has anything to do with how we light the Hanukkah candles, from 1 up to 8. Ma'alin b'kedusha, we go upwards in holy matters, never downwards. So you may have seen this video before, but I have seen it many times, but it never gets tired, I think. So the Ode to Joy, recorded in a flash mob scene in a Spanish town, written by the music by Beethoven, the lyrics by Schiller, about the triumph of brotherhood and hope and joy. Okay, fun. Anyway, I hope you found some joy today, and we want to thank our contestants, Lauren, David, and Deborah, wherever you are. We want to thank Pam, of course. Thank you, Pam. Wouldn't do it without this. And Kevin Trainer, our chef, has prepared some latkes, and I guess we bought some Hamantaschen, and they're all back there on the table. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you all for being here. And Greg?
First of all, thank you to Rabbi Rudolph.
My pleasure.